Were you one of the 1.1 million people that watched Tina, the Tina Turner documentary on HBO this past weekend? Well, I was, and I'm going to talk about it right now. Hey everybody, Chris King here with Love Live Music. Thanks for tuning in to me today. What I'm going to talk about is Tina, the Tina Turner documentary that we've all been waiting for that has just aired on HBO Max. Have you seen it? Because I've got 5 things that I took away from watching this Tina Turner documentary that I want to discuss with you today. And they're in no particular order, and then I'll sum up kind of my thoughts on the documentary at the end. The first thing that I noticed through all of the footage, and there's a lot of outstanding footage of old performances of Tina and Ike and the things that they did in, I guess, getting started in St. Louis is where she met him. She, of course, being from Nutbush city limits, Tennessee. Ike being a St. Louis guy, although I think he was originally born in Clarksdale. I think he was born near the Crossroads or in that area. So they meet up in St. Louis, and there's a lot of photos of them performing. Said that sometimes they would perform 3 or 4 times a night. Maybe they said 6 times in one night, which would be crazy, although these were probably rather short sets, I'm guessing, at that time. But one thing I noticed was so many of the photos of them on stage, they're performing in areas with these little drop ceilings where there's no space above them. So it had to have been a really tight fit. And I can only imagine the live energy that would come off of that. Maybe not so aesthetically pleasing to see as an audience member looking forward, but the fact that these drop ceilings are pervasive in so many of these photos really show you back to another time of live music and how performances were orchestrated, especially in the South, especially for performers that weren't on a big stage. It's not a festival. It's not necessarily a fair unless it's indoors. But I was just really taken with those really low ceilings. Another thing is, Ike Turner. And this is really, it could have been called the Tina and Ike Turner story, although that's been dramatized, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. I don't have a lot of knowledge of Ike Turner's history. We all know the stories of him as a person that beat up Tina Turner, and that's a very unfortunate and sad circumstance, part of her life, and one that we see repeated throughout as she gets questioned several times about that relationship. Where's the relationship now? Maybe it's post-divorce or post-separation, and she continues in interviews to be asked about Ike, which was really, in my opinion, reminiscent of, recently I watched the Framing Britney Spears documentary, and I really felt a lot of sameness there of when Diana Sawyer would interview Britney and ask some questions. Maybe they were difficult questions for the artist, and we see that again, that Tina really took a lot of that with her. You don't see footage of Ike Turner being grilled about his relationship with Tina and things like that, although, of course, it's not his show, but he certainly, for the first 2/3, he is a big driving force of this documentary, is their relationship. I did not realize his, I didn't know that he wrote Rocket 88, which is known as one of the first, if not the first, actual rock and roll songs. Although I've got some words for Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who, in my opinion, invented rock and roll. Then you see Ike really come across outside of the horribleness of the violence that is spoken of. I'm fascinated with Ike as a musician. Even the fact that he continued for decades later. He got a Grammy Award in 2008. And I'm fascinated by the Ike Turner career. I want to go back through the Ike Turner catalog, the stuff that didn't necessarily involve Tina, because I want to do a deep dive into that and learn more about Ike Turner. One time I was at Memphis in May, the Beale Street Music Festival, and Ike Turner was one of the performers. And I was checking into my hotel early Friday afternoon in an area that wasn't close to the river or close to the festival site. It was pretty far off. And I remember looking behind me, and here comes this entourage, and within feet, standing in line behind me to check into the hotel, is Ike Turner and his people that he's got with him, his girlfriend, performers. They're all directly behind me in line. And I wasn't intimidated. I don't think he was intimidated, but I wasn't. Another takeaway on this is the tour manager that gets interviewed. And I believe that this production may have been dedicated to this person. I think that was the name that came up at the end. I could be wrong. I haven't gone back, and I just watched it once through. I took a few notes. But the tour manager seemed very privy to the whole explosive dynamic of Ike and Tina and the beatings that were going on. And I've just got to ask myself, was this tour manager part of the problem? Was this person an enabler, or was this person standing up and voicing that it was wrong and needed to be stopped and trying to be protective of Tina Turner? Another takeaway number 4, if you're counting, for me is, as it got deeper into the documentary, they began to use some dramatizations from the movie What's Love Got to Do with It, which starred Angela Bassett and Lawrence Fishburne in the roles of Tina and Ike. And I kind of thought that was cheap for the documentary to do. For one reason or the other, I didn't feel like it meshed well with the rest. And probably my biggest takeaway from this, and one that still, man, I've thought about it because I watched this 2 or 3 days ago, and I've thought about it several times. When What's Love Got to Do with It came out in 1984, Tina Turner was 45 years old. That's amazing to me. And I know she had had a career before, but she and Ike separated in 76. So from 76 to 84, it shows her playing Vegas, working that route, doing things, taking gigs without having the bigness that she would have later in her career. But for an artist to hit big at the age of 45 in what seems like a rebirth, I think they even say it was Tina's real debut because she hadn't had one before. I'm just fascinated by the fact that from 84 to 89, that Tina Turner, was 45 to 50 years old and having this huge success. And you just don't see that now, although I feel like there will come a time when older people, I'm saying people in their 50s and 60s that we've never heard of, will become names that we're aware of in different artistic mediums. We've seen it before. We haven't seen it as much in pop music, and I don't know why that is, other than it will happen. It's just my thought, and I'll go deeper into that at some other point. One quote from Tina that I really loved that she said in this was, "I will receive it when I've earned it." And that was a really strong statement for her about when that reward and those accolades would come her way. All in all, it was a good documentary. I didn't love it as much as the Bee Gees documentary that I found to be more focused on the music. This seemed to be more about Tina's life. I would have wished to have seen, the legend has it that Tina Turner taught Mick Jagger how to dance. I would like to know where that came from. Is there any footage of that? Just from a live performance point of view, I wanted more out of this. I wanted to see more footage. At the end, we see what looks like Rock in Rio, where she's doing the song The Best. And Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic to see that many people out there at a concert. But I wanted to see more of the performance. I wanted to see more of the evolution of her becoming the star that she became in the 80s. I know we get the backstory on the songs. And another thing, of all of her catalog, Tina has not written very many of those songs. And I don't want that to seem like a knock. I just find that interesting. Nutbush, she wrote that one. But she's got a long line of cover songs that became hits. And I'm not even talking about songs that songwriters wrote for her that became hers, which we see with, We Don't Need Another Hero, or we see with not necessarily What's Love Got to Do with It. That would be considered a cover because another band had already recorded it. But Private Dancer, we see that she had so many cover songs, be it Proud Mary or Come Together. Even on some later albums, Let's Stay Together by Al Green, that was a single on the What's Love Got to Do with It album. I think that was the first actual single that paved the way for the monster success of, and the album's actually called Private Dancer, right? I Can't Stand the Rain. There's all of these classic R&B and classic rock songs that she's covered, and I just think that that's very interesting that that's a large part of her catalog. I'm a Tina Turner fan. I enjoyed watching the documentary. I'm a sucker for these things whenever they come out, especially when they're as well done as this. I enjoyed seeing Tina being interviewed at her age. She's got to be 80 years old, but even sitting there in her chair at home in Switzerland at 80 years old, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, she can still do it. She could still do it. It might not be a tour, but she could get out there and she could give us a performance, show us what she's got. She could do it nice and soft or nice and rough or whatever. That's Tina Turner, man. And I enjoyed the Tina documentary. I hope you get a chance to watch it. If you've seen it, leave me a comment about what you think about it in my comments. If you like to hear me talk about music and you like to see my videos like this sucker that's coming up on the screen right now, then please hit the subscribe or watch some more, and I'll be back around. My name's Chris King. I love live music.